Hello, team. Welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. A 3v3 game between Alpha Team and Bravo Team, as always, on Alpha Team, Athena in blue, Zelda in red, and Deedland in orange, and on Bravo Team, Romad Quantum Scientist in teal, Viking 69 in pink. And someone said that my nickname sucks. In green, Zelda has spawned on this side. Deedland is right beside Athena, so this is Bravo team or Alpha team. Pardon me, taking up the right-hand side of the map. Bravo team is Viking 69 in the north here, Romad in the center, and the nickname in the south a little bit in this mountain range. An airport, pardon me, for Zelda. 3 airport immediately for Deedland, who goes for 2 towns immediately with the pre-construction money and an airport, and then 2 subsequent airports. 3 factories and a barracks for Athena. 3 barracks for Viking 69, who is going to have to contest this open field potentially. Viking 69 is in a decent spot because this is a very good defensive position using the geography of the map, like the mountain ranges. So Athena will have to have some support or a very good push to get through this mountain range, potentially, depending on how Viking 69 decides to set up a defense if there needs to be one. 3 factories for Romad, who is going for a refinery immediately. I'm going to assume that these are tanks coming out of these factories because of the requirement for Nickname to have the gas, or pardon me, for Romad to have the gas. And Nickname in the south, going for 3 factories themselves, 2 industry following that up. By this point, we can see that Zelda's also put down 2 factories and 1 airport. Airport's making strikers at the moment. And the good thing for Alpha Team is that they have good gas security. This refinery on land and then this refinery in the water if they decide to take a dock. And presumably that energy is going to come into play because 4 airports for Deedland is going to be a lot of energy that's used. And if Athena keeps making tanks, so it is a tank switch, Athena's going for tanks out of the factories, there's definitely going to need to be a handful of refineries or power plants for Alpha Team to be able to pull off this strat. We can see there's 2 more oil wells relatively close, and Athena puts down their first oil well of the game. 3rd factory on the way now for Zelda, who's building tanks. And not really sure, it's artillery pieces actually for Nickname in the south, who is also building their first barracks of the game. 2 industry at this point are finished. There's a lot of good economy in the back for Bravo Team. I mean, this is pretty much guaranteed to be Bravo Team's territory in the bottom left because of the location of where Alpha Team is. And Romad is in fact going for tanks, and the first 3 are out at this point. So between Romad pushing in the south and Viking pushing in the north, this big open field might turn into a very contested part of the map. Viking 69 going for 2 airports, 1 striker is already built, refinery is on the way. This refinery for Viking is actually in a relatively tough position because these 3 tanks for Athena and the subsequent tanks, because it's open field, they're going to be able to rush by this infantry and get on top of this refinery. And I'm not sure if Bravo Team can defend this. Romad is immediately sending all the tanks up to the north to try to cut off these 3 tanks of Athena, and because of this quick reaction, Bravo Team likely going to be able to keep the gas, or at the very least destroy all the tanks as they attempt to destroy this pink refinery. First striker for Viking 69 is going to be able to get some first shots off on the tanks. Athena is targeting that refinery. We'll have to see how that goes. First striker for Zelda is out and starting to go out. At this point, both teams know where the other teams are based on vision. We can look at what Athena's vision is so you get the idea that everyone on Alpha Team knows where everyone on Bravo Team is, and vice versa. Here comes the big question whether these 3 blue tanks can destroy this refinery. The 3 strikers for Deedland are getting in the mix immediately. Athena does snipe that refinery, so the planes for Viking have to go home unless there's a second refinery somewhere on the map. But at the moment, Bravo Team really only has this 1 water refinery from Romad. Deedland is going to build up an absurd number of planes. Off of 4 airports, it is going to ramp up relatively quickly. It looks like it's all just strikers, so going for that critical mass of strikers, which makes a lot of sense. If your teammates can hold off the opponent and you can just macro up on 4 airports, And if you can continue to keep the energy required to send the planes out, it's a very strong strat, it seems like, at this point in the game. Second barracks for Nickname, and first barracks for Romad in the back here that is just going to start sending more capping infantry to the bottom left. Athena at this point has 6 tanks out. There's a round of SAMs now getting set up for blue to counteract all these pink strikers. And it's going to be a question of who positions themselves in the north here with the tanks and make sure that the tanks can't get by. I mean, Athena's in a relatively precarious situation in the sense that these tanks could destroy this refinery relatively quickly, like Romad's tanks. And furthermore, Romad's tanks could get on top of all these airports pretty quickly. Of course, as long as Deedland doesn't have strikers up in the air, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. But it's an open field map in the north, which makes tanks very deadly. This push from Romad into the forest doesn't do as much as planned. There's some artillery pieces in here for Athena that have the bonus. I mean, they do super well against infantry. Already we can see Deedland has like 9 strikers out at this point in the game, which is a lot. And here comes Athena's tanks that are going to rush by as soon as these teal tanks are cleaned up, and there's really nothing to defend it. Some of the strikers for pink are going to have to get involved here to try to defend these tanks. This is a depot that Viking is building, connecting it with a pipeline to this refinery to start saving up a bunch of that energy. And in the south, Zelda's digging in with tanks in the mountains. The mountains are a good defensive position. This is not generally like the role that tanks look to play on the battlefield. You really want to be using them in open fields, getting around armies, running to production facilities. And Nickname's going to start pushing with this artillery, and there's some SAMs at this point to deal with a handful of these red strikers. Refinery in the back for Zelda connected to a depot, which could be connected to Deedland's refinery in the top right. And then potentially eco or energy sharing going on for Bravo team and Alpha team. Athena's definitely getting that gas. The planes have to go home. You can see the black plume of smoke. And just tons of planes from Deedland going out on another sortie. And it's going to be tough because... So Romad has 4 SAMs at this point. There's no SAMs for Viking. And these tanks aren't going to move quickly through the mountains. But they are going... If they get to this airport, they could do a ton of damage. The good thing for Viking is that there's Commandos here to defend. And the tanks have terrible vision. So these Commandos might actually not be seen. Like, we can look into Athena's view. None of these Commandos are seen at the moment. So as a defending force, with nothing supporting those blue tanks to give the vision, Viking likely is going to like be able to hold off those tanks and not like let them destroy their entire base at this point. This is an enormous amount of artillery for Nickname that's going to slowly push through this mountains. There's now a 3rd SAM on the way. 3 SAMs against this many strikers can do a decent job. Nickname flanking this defensive line of SAMs. And so if you get behind the defensive lines, the defensive bonus of the units is negated entirely. Nickname now has a town. The last industry is built, so Nickname could build a city there at some point. Another depot for Deedland. And this is Athena's depot, so Athena's starting to build up gas here. If Bravo team, or Alpha team, pardon me, starts connecting these depots via pipelines, they can turn on energy sharing. And we'll see if that comes into play here. Deedland has the highest gas requirement, and Deedland has 2 refineries already, so it might actually be enough. You can see the strength of what Deedland's doing by being able to send these planes down to the south and help defend Zelda's like northern frontier. 4 SAMs at this point. The SAM numbers for Nickname are growing, which counteract all these red strikers. We'll see the trade here. And we don't see the projectiles, but these SAMs are going to kill that striker. And the reason we don't is because I don't think Athena's vision can see those SAMs. So on the replay, we're not actually seeing the projectiles, but they are doing a lot of damage. They get like 2 of those strikers, Another factory for Romad. This brings it up to 5 total. And it's now 4 full airports for Deedland. If Zelda builds an airstrip here, Deedland could send planes down to the south. If you build an airstrip, you can turn on allied sharing, so like your allies' planes could land at that airstrip. And that could come into play just given the number of planes that Deedland has, and because there's no more room on these airports, the airports aren't actually going to be building any more planes if there's no more room for them to land. With this many planes, it's a good amount of SAMs for Romad, but if they get picked off by the tanks, they won't be able to do anything at this point. And with this many strikers anyway, it is quite a number. The strikers might be able to kill a bunch of these SAMs, if not all of them, especially in conjunction with these blue tanks that are rushing forward on a hasted move command. You can see Athena just clicking on each one of these SAMs essentially to get these tanks to move right on top of them. And this entirely resets Romad's SAM count. There's still 4 technically, a 5th one about to pop. But Deedland lost, you know, not a ton of planes in that first exchange. Deedland sending some infantry down to the south. Alpha Team at this point has capped the entire right-hand side of the map. Bravo Team's getting a lot of economy to capping in the bottom left, so Bravo Team might actually have an economic advantage relatively soon. Interceptor out for Viking to try to help to deal with those yellow strikers of Deedland, but interceptors are very fragile, especially against the SAMs, of which Athena has a good amount. The 3 tanks do get 1 factory. They're likely going to get a 2nd factory. And this is a decent push for Athena. Nickname's got 2 airports themselves building. This power plant is connected to Romad's refinery, which is also connected to Viking's depot, so the gas sharing is likely in full force. These 3 SAMs are just doing great work. The positioning is fantastic for them. And they're going to get at least 1 more plane. And these 2 tanks for Athena might actually kill another factory. They're just clicking on that factory. They do. Unfortunate timing for Romad. That tank goes down pretty much as soon as it destroys the factory. So Romad loses 3 factories there. Tanks are very strong, and they obviously can tank a lot, as their name would suggest. So when they're on top of a factory like that, without other tanks or helicopters or strikers shooting at them, they have a lot of survivability. Interceptor for Viking doing its best to try to destroy some of these planes, but the SAMs are still a huge threat to them on the ground. In the south, Nickname is making good gains, starting to get into the Forest of Zelda, who's pouring some more reinforcement artillery in. But it's really overwhelming artillery numbers for Nickname at this point, who's going to build a barracks in the south and send commandos around to the energy infrastructure for Alpha Team. More industry for Nickname. An industry spot here, and then also a town in the forest. And Romad's down to 2 factories and 2 barracks. Romad's building some industry in the back, and the gas, of course. Bravo Team is about to cap the entire bottom left side of the map, which will give a lot of economy. And luckily, I mean, I hope, for Bravo Team's sake, if Viking can get an army in the north and start putting some pressure on Athena, it would alleviate a bunch of pressure on Romad here, who is going to hold this position, really. These commandos for Viking are kind of picking off a lot of these reinforcements that are trickling in for blue. And I'm wondering where these planes are for Deedland. They're going to have to likely help out in the south, because without any support, Zelda's in a lot of trouble given how large this army is for Nickname. First commando's out for Nickname in the south, and we'll start making the long journey to start trying to destroy this refinery. Deedland has 3 industry here. Both teams making sure they're keeping on top of their economies and scaling them up. 4 power plants in the back for Deedland to provide more energy security for all of these strikers. of which there's, I mean, there's two full sorties going out, one to the north and one to the south here. And Romad's still in trouble. 4 interceptors for Nickname are launched at the perfect time, on haste to get here. They're going to clean up at least one of the strikers, potentially even 2 of them. Interceptors have this funny sort of behavior where they fly quicker than the strikers. So instead of this one trailing behind and throttling its speed to actually kill both of these strikers, they go too quick and overpass them. Overpass them is the verb used in that context. Bravo team's starting to stabilize here. Athena's reinforcements are slowing. And maybe some momentum will go back in Bravo team's favor. Vikings got 2 factories in the beginning of this mountain range. So they'll be able to start flooding more units to the right-hand side. And now that all this territory in the back is capped, all the units can start going forward for Bravo team. Still a very good push for Nickname. There's no sign of this stopping. These helicopters are good for Zelda, but as long as these SAMs are in a great position for Nickname, there's not much the helicopters are going to be able to do. Nickname's got a city going, you can tell by the cranes. Good amount of interceptors. It's all just interceptors from Nickname at this point. Likely thinking about how many strikers there are here for Deedland. And for some reason, this commando for Nickname has stopped, even though this move command, you'd think that the commando would just keep going. Not really sure what's up with that. Good scouting party from Zelda who's going to see all of this industry. Not that it's entirely surprising, but it's always good to get confirmation. And we can see the interaction between SAMs and helicopters. As you would expect, SAMs do very, very well against helicopters. 3 more factories, in fact 4 more factories for Athena with another barracks. So in some time, Alpha Team is going to have a huge blue army here. Another factory, or rather the first factory for Deedland. Still no airstrips, or actually here they are. 2 airstrips in the south, so Deedland's built these. This will be a huge help. This many strikers against this many SAMs, if Deedland and Zelda sent all the planes at the same time, they might not be able to clear all the SAMs on the first run, but they would start to whittle down the numbers at least a little bit. And really at this point, Zelda's gonna have to dig in likely. Because these units are just kind of trickling one by one, and Nickname's got a bunch of pre-deployed artillery. Another factory for Nickname who's got the second city on the way, which will give them a bunch of money. This is going to heat up in the north, for sure. Romad's now been able to, you know, consolidate the forces, start pushing out. Definitely held on. Still a good amount of SAMs for Athena, who's building more SAMs. There's 3 more on the way. There's still 2 here. They're doing great work. They might even get another interceptor potentially. And all of these infantry for Bravo team are going to be able to be sent forward at this point. Relatively close game, I think, at this point. 3rd factory for Viking in the mountains. Some barracks in the back. And 2 airstrips to be able to cover Romad's base. This is the Allied sharing airstrip that we're talking about. This little bulldozer is making the airstrip. As soon as it's done, Viking's going to be able to land planes here. Nickname is also going to be able to land planes here. The little flag denotes that the teammate sharing is on. 2 full flowers of SAMs at this point for Nickname. And this one commando for sure is just being super annoying. You can see, like, so this is Alpha Team's vision. They can't see these 2 commandos. Even with 2 strikers, it's just not enough. Strikers don't have good enough detection to be able to see that. A little bit of a dogfight here between all these strikers that are attacking predominantly ground units against the pink and green strikers now for Nickname that are on haste move. You can tell by the trails on the wings. So they are moving very quickly. It might actually not even be haste move. This might just be how quick interceptors are. And they clear out a bunch of the planes here for yellow. They might get one more. In fact, they do. The 4 additional factories that we saw Fina build have now come online, so the units are going to start pouring out. A second factory for Deedland. And this remains a huge problem for Alpha Team, because very slowly Nickname is pushing forward, building another town, another refinery on the way for Nickname, who has the second city nearly completed. An absolute mess of pipelines going around. Presumably Bravo Team has good energy security, and we can see that Romad's got a dock going, a port already, and then a dock just to cap all these water territories. Good little push from Deedland with the infantry. They could potentially start attacking this town, but one of the strengths here is that when Deedland does this with all these infantry, all these pink planes have to stay at home, and they can't be in this main fight. Deedland sending their strikers out to attack this town, they're likely going to get it, just based on the number of strikers that there are. 5 strikers are needed to destroy a building on the first pass. And although the teal interceptors are showing up, they show up just in time to have that, watch that town explode. They'll get a handful of strikers on the way out. Potentially a third one. They got 2. Let's see if they can get a third. And this is an enormous army from Athena, who's on 8 factories. No, I can count. 9 factories, 2 barracks against the 4 factories, 2 barracks of Romad. So definitely a production gap. But this is, I mean, Nickname is just crushing here in the south. And continue to send these commandos up. Alpha Team has no idea about these commandos. This is gonna definitely shock Alpha Team. And they might lose a handful of refineries here, because if the commandos get up here and the planes are sent out at like unfortunate timing, there's gonna be nothing at home for Alpha Team to stop the commandos from destroying all the refineries. Good defensive line from Viking, who will likely just start building up forces until they can start pushing in earnest in the north. Romad is gonna need some help here to defend this push from Athena. Athena's using the tanks beautifully to get on top of the SAMs. This is one of the best things that tanks can be used for, is just to run by the artillery, go to the back part of the front line and destroy the SAMs that allow these yellow strikers to do work. And Nickname's going to start trying to destroy that depot. It's great that Nickname is attacking this one first, because this will draw the attention of all the strikers for Alpha Team. Deedland putting down 3 more barracks. It could be for commandos to garrison near the energy. It could just be for fodder in the south. This push is going to slowly go into Blue's favor, just based on the artillery numbers here. And as long as Athena keeps the SAMs required to deal with Pink's strikers and Nickname's interceptors, and Nickname's interceptors are on this airstrip. As long as Athena can keep those planes at bay, this is going to go very well. All the havoc from these commandos. They got the one depot. They're going to get this refinery very likely. This one commando is attacking this depot. It's going to destroy all these pipelines, which is exactly what we see. And then they're going to start working on this refinery. This is a huge blow to Alpha Team. Because of these 4 power plants, Deedland's still able to fly planes, which is a big deal. Factory for Zelda in the north, and this is Zelda's reaction to the main base being overrun. This army still exists for Nickname. It really hasn't, you know, like the Alpha Team hasn't been able to shave off any of the units in this army, really. And with the blob like this, Alpha Team's going to need to have a bigger blob, or at least a relatively similar size blob, or potentially even a rocket will come into play. 4 commandos for Nickname are going to be able to destroy another barracks. The strikers clean up the commandos that were in the north. And Romad's going for it. The infantry rushes forward to try to get on top of this artillery, providing a meat shield for these artillery pieces of teal that are going to be firing at the blue artillery, whereas blue's artillery is firing at the teal infantry, so it allows teal's artillery to get some more shots off. But it's still a huge army for blue. Nickname's sending interceptors around the back, likely in anticipation for orange's strikers to be sent at this fight. So these interceptors could, of course, intercept those units. But that's why you're here on the channel for those high-level puns. Great amount of SAMs for Deedland, though, to take out all these intercept the interceptors that were intercepting the strikers. And they're going to get 4 of them, potentially. 3 SAMs hit that one, it gets out. Frontline slowly breaking for Romad. The good thing is that Romad has 3 tanks, but because of the number of blue artillery, it might not be enough to stop this push. But on the other hand, for Bravo Team and Romad's sake, Nickname continues to push in the south here. 2 cities, of course, for Nickname. Nickname going for bombers at this point. Pardon me. And here come the strikers. It's a good amount of SAMs for Romad. And they're going to do a decent job. They're probably going to get, what, 3 planes? Maybe 4. They got 2 already. A 3rd one falls. 1 pink interceptor in the mix, but flying over the SAMs. And is dispatched relatively quickly. And this is a full cleanup almost from Bravo Team on these yellow strikers. The SAMs for Romad are all gone. I guess I say full cleanup, and there's still 6 planes or 7 planes that get out. Athena's army is still enormous off of these 8 barracks that are going. And I think this is a moment where Viking needs to consider pushing through the north so that Athena can't send any more reinforcements at Romad's base. Romad's got another factory on the way. It's 6 factories here for Romad. Slowly over time, Romad's going to be able to mount a defense. They just need time to do so. The Commandos for Viking are doing a great job, because they are disrupting these reinforcements of Athena. There's no more Commandos on the loose for Nickname. This group of them will... I mean, by the time they get here, Nickname's main army is going to have destroyed all these buildings. A bunch of infantry and some artillery pieces now for Nickname are starting to destroy the industry of Deedland. There's no SAMs close. So Deedland strikers are going to be able to handle this. Likely still lose the farm. Because these are farms, as you would expect. And it's a great counter push from Viking. These commandos are buying a lot of time. And it allows Romad to kind of gather their forces a little bit here. Here comes another push. Infantry running forward. The tanks are on top of the artillery. All the artillery... Okay, 1 second. Here we go. Shift backspace. Who left? Deedland left. The game's over. There you go. Caught me off guard. I know there's a top bar with the timer, but I very rarely look at it. And yeah, economy-wise, Bravo Team's just wildly ahead. What is Nickname's economy? Off of those 2 cities. Quite large. Well played. Both teams. That felt a lot closer than I guess it apparently was. But gas-wise, it kind of kneecapped from the Commandos of Nickname. I'd assume this is where Nickname's Commandos were able to start destroying stuff. Anyway, great game. Props to Athena for posting this match in the match replays channel in the Discord. Double props for posting games that they don't necessarily win. We never know what the result's going to be. It's always more fun to cast like that. Folks, I hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is for you. We'll see you soon. Peace.